welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. A couple of action items before we get started. All attendees are on mute. If you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A box located at the bottom panel here on Zoom. We have some time allotted for Q&A at the end of the session, but feel free to drop your questions in throughout. So welcome to the Merchant's No Nonsense Guide to ERPs webinar, NetSuite edition. My name is Anthony Michael. I work here at ShipStation as the Partner Marketing Specialist, and I will be your host today. So without further ado, let's introduce you to your speakers. So guys, if you wouldn't mind going around and telling the audience a little bit about yourselves.
Absolutely. I think my name's first, so alphabetical order over here. I'll go first. Hi, folks. My name is Asad Ahmed. I'm an industry solution advisor here at Oracle NetSuite. Been with NetSuite for close to 10 years. I do have a longer introduction coming up after this with slides to back it up. So I shall pass the baton down to Ken for the rest of the introductions here.
Again, my name's Ken Fike. I manage for Octane and obviously all of our brands, ShipStation, Shipping Easy, ShipEngine, all those fun places. I manage our enterprise technology partnerships, which in simple words is mainly ERPs, EDI, PaaS technology. So I work with NetSuite very closely and also with the next intro you'll see, Dave. Dave,
awesome. To you. Thanks so much, Ken. So Dave Malda, I'm at Jitterbit, and I'm a sales director specifically for e-commerce and EDI integrations. I know Ken very well, and I've worked with him for quite a few years. Asad, I've gotten to know, and I've been doing this for almost 15 years now, so fairly well versed in the ecosystem and in those specific EDI and e-commerce integrations. So it's great to be here.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining, or for being here and for agreeing to participate on this. I'm really excited to talk through everything we have in store, which is the perfect segue into what we're going to be talking about today. So today's agenda, we're going to start with demystifying ERPs. This is tied to the No Nonsense Guide to ERPs that we co-produced with Jitterbit. Just kind of setting the floor for those who aren't familiar with ERPs and how they operate and what they are. From there, we get a brief introduction to NetSuite, courtesy of Asad. And then we're going to go through a number of, a number of common pain points and problems that we find merchants facing, and give you ways to solve those using NetSuite, Jitterbit, and ShipStation. And then finally, we close with a Q&A session. Starting with demystifying ERPs. Ken, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about what an ERP is and what they do.
Yeah, so this is something that comes up in my role when I'm working with our merchants, I mean, almost daily. In its simple form, hopefully this is a simple diagram, but an ERP really is the backbone of your business. It's your source of truth for everything that your business is doing, every piece of data, workflow process. That's what's all going through your ERP to streamline your business. When it comes to demystifying, it's almost like to our merchants, it's like this elusive, like unicorn technology that they're kind of scared of. They don't know how to get it. Like, oh, what do we do? Probably because of the name of enterprise resource planning. And Asad, maybe you'll hopefully not disagree with me on this, but you go back 10 years ago, they were built for the most part for enterprise businesses. But now I think that definition has really shifted, and we see it a lot. I mean, we partner very, very closely with NetSuite. And I would say that they're leaders in this market, it's really changed from just an enterprise business to really taking your business, even a small business, and how do you scale that into an enterprise business? The focus really has shifted from kind of a maintain or farming to a grow. And that's really, we'll see it here in the next slide here, Anthony, if you want to switch slides. But in terms of like, what does it really do for you? I mean, these are just some of the highlights. I mean, it's, when you're looking at your business from kind of a high level, you typically are going to have all kinds of needs for all kinds of different technologies. And at the end of the day, they all need to communicate. They all need to talk. Everything has to flow seamlessly. Otherwise, you can't make decisions in real time. And business, life, everything moves at the blink of an eye. And so this is where, you know, we bring NetSuite in to help our merchants to be able to kind of make sense of all this and put them on a path to success.
Absolutely. And thank you for shedding light on that. So with that, Dave, you working in the API, EDI, connector space, can you tell us a little bit about how ERPs work?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the next slide, sort of covers some of this as well. But so hopefully it's not redundant. But basically, in our space, we'll have sort of up and coming businesses that are looking to scale, businesses that are growing. They come to us with a whole host of sort of different challenges, right? And often they'll be early in their journey, maybe with an ERP. And what they're trying to get to is, having the finger on the pulse of their business, so to speak, right? And so, maybe some of them are coming off of QuickBooks or Sage 50. When they come into a system like NetSuite, all of a sudden they have, real data, a real-time data access. They've got enhanced reporting capabilities, right? There's certain automations that are available. Maybe they're getting requests from other companies, other vendors that they're dealing with, to start to share information, right? And typically that's sort of pushing data back and forth, right? And so having something like an ERP like NetSuite just really, I think, allows them to kind of streamline their operations, right? To help support making better decisions. And again, in the length of time that I've been in this with our business, we've sort of seen these growing companies kind of lean into these ERPs and be able to scale properly, right? I think that the API piece that you mentioned, you really get to leverage something like NetSuite when you are able to talk to these different systems, right? And so just real quick, I was at Suite World a couple of weeks ago, and in the keynote, it was just really great to hear from either companies that were using NetSuite and had maybe put something like Avalara in, or they had used some other third-party product or platform that was communicating with NetSuite, right? And so kind of seeing the strength of that ecosystem, I think really demonstrated, like, how does an ERP work? Well, it works with a community of these tech platforms and businesses working together, and these businesses and these leaders get to just take advantage of that. So
Absolutely. That was excellent. And so that begets the question, when is it time for an ERP? When should a merchant consider, adopting one? Are there any telltale signs, I guess?
Yeah, again, just in my sort of experience, and probably Assad and Ken could they may have much more experience with this, but in my experience, it's usually people are starting to hit a roadblock or a wall in terms of like growth, right? So maybe there's a lot of inefficiencies or manual processes that they're involved in their day-to-day. And as we all know, those things they're error prone, they're time consuming, they're not quick, right? So someone may be needing a report or some insight into some data, and they have to wait maybe a couple of days or maybe even a week or two, right, to get that. So it's when you're hitting these types of walls that we see folks jump over to something like NetSuite to be able to scale, to be able to kind of knock down those walls of inefficiencies. These manual processes, they start to kind of go by the wayside. And I think probably third, there's many points, but I would say maybe third is like other vendors and customers asking for specific pieces of data, or maybe you have a 3PL that's looking to get information, on orders that you've received and they need to be shipped, right? And so you start, running into roadblocks when you're on something that's maybe not able to, doesn't have the capability to share that type of information, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And then Ken, Assad, anything to add, I guess, to that?
Yeah, so I think from our merchants, what I run into quite a bit, look, there's a notion that scale breaks things, and it's true, right? So if we look at our company, we use NetSuite, but we have a bunch of different business models. We are, 2,500, 3,000 employees globally. To make changes and adjust, and even whether it's any of our other technology hubs, it's a process when you're a big company. It's harder when you're a big company. So when you look at when is the time, it's now. right? And it's a lot easier to make these changes and scale without, having to do the proverbial try to change the engine on an airplane while you're flying, right? It's a lot easier to do that early. I mean, we're working with 2 startups. Now, both these companies have tech backgrounds, so they understand this probably more than the average business in terms of technology snacks, but they understand they're both startups that are using NetSuite, but they understand that that choosing the right system that scales with them over time, right? Getting the right modules and things that they need now, but knowing they're going to need other ones in the future as they scale. That's important because they can do that on the fly without having to rip out a system and replace it. So it's a lot easier to do this earlier than it is when you're a much larger company. So
Absolutely. So it's almost, sorry, go ahead, Assad.
No, I was going to say, I think Ken and David kind of covered pretty much all aspects of that, right? And this is something that we see quite a bit, is growth. Growth comes at a cost, with money and time and resources. You want to focus on making sure that your systems are set up correctly, set them up now. I think Ken covered it best, right? You can't change the engine on an aircraft while flying. Is the same thing. It's going to be harder down the road. That's when you have processes in place. You sometimes even pick up bad habits in managing how you run your business. There's going to be complexity that comes in. We see quite a bit on our part, right? If you are a business on retail right now, you're selling products, but you may want to start manufacturing them at some point. How do you add those capabilities and complexities into your systems? Maybe your distribution, maybe you're selling B2B, maybe you're selling B2C right now, but you're going to expand your channels. That's when we start seeing companies should start thinking about growth before it happens rather than tackling it when it happens.
Absolutely. So taking a preemptive approach as opposed to a responsive approach effectively. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you guys.
I think too, Anthony,
sorry,
Assad just made a really good point there. What we see, and I should have mentioned this, is B2B, B2C, the sort of online offline kind of channel, right? That's where we see folks maybe making the jump as well. Right? So they're selling on multiple surfaces or multiple sales channels, and that obviously adds complexity, right? And that's a really great point that Assad made there.
And when you
Absolutely.
add those complexities, which is why it's important when you're starting to grow early to understand, don't look at tomorrow. Don't look at next year. Look at 5 years, 10 years. Where do you really want to be? What systems are going to get you there? Because you don't want to start adding in all different functionalities from all different vendors. Because look, this is what I do for a living. I can promise you they don't talk. I can already tell you they're not going to communicate without a very expensive integration. So when Assad mentioned there's a cost to growth, yeah. And getting 2 systems to talk can be very difficult, which is why you need to look at that hub and say, okay, and again, we'll get into this more, but what's their ecosystem look like? What other things can I add in that I know that communicate and work well, that these companies work together from a technology standpoint to make sure all that data is accurate? Because if it's not, you're going to make decisions for your business based on false data, and that's not good.
Absolutely. Wow. That was great nuggets, y'all. Thank you guys. That was great. And I think it sets up a great segue. So we've set up kind of laid the groundwork for ERPs as a whole. Now we're going to get into really the star of today's show, NetSuite. So Assad, to you.
Sounds
Who
good.
is NetSuite? Tell us about him.
So NetSuite, if you were to go with the actual real introduction, is like, hey, we've been around for 25 years. We're the real first cloud company. We have over 36,000 customers using us. We are used across the globe. We're multi-language, multi-subsidiary, true multi solution, right? But what really comes down to is for our listeners today, people who have who is logged into this Zoom for us today, is that at the end of the day, it is a seamlessly unified platform. Your ERP, your CRM, your inventory management, your commerce, your POS, and plethora of other aspects of your business are one and the same thing. We can start off small. We can start off with financials and add subsequent things in, or we can come in with a big bang approach and change everything day one. It really comes down to you how you want it to be. Another good aspect of NetSuite is we started talking about ERP being the enterprise. Enterprises come in many different sizes. And that's exactly what NetSuite comes in. It comes in multiple different sizes for you. You could be a startup. You could be even a pre-revenue company. We have tons of those companies that are coming in pre-revenue. We have the unicorns who go through a hyper-growth cycle on their part. And then we have big conglomerates like national names that you see and hear maybe on TV and maybe see them in other areas of your life. All of those businesses are able to use us, and we're able to manage all of their order to cash processes, procure to pay, forecasting, record to report, all of the main things that you need to do. At the end of the day, no matter what kind of business you run, there's going to be the order to cash process. You could be selling a product. There's going to be an order for that product. There's going to be cash received for that, or monies received for that. You could be selling a service. Same thing happens on that end. Same thing happens when you're going in procuring products. And the last thing I'll mention on the NetSuite side of it is that the ecosystem is ever growing and ever expanding. Dave mentioned we had our annual user conference a couple of weeks ago. The conversation was around suite up or suiting up, however you want to call that. Adding in things. And this is where we're very happy and very lucky to have a very robust ecosystem of partners that will build solutions and tack on to NetSuite. And the good part about those solutions is when you look at, like, we mentioned Avalara earlier, that's going to be one of our tax partners. We have ShipStation ready on the call with us. Jitterbit being on the call with us today. Is they not only build these solutions, but they're built for NetSuite. So it is not something that sits outside of the ecosystem and you're like, hey, it works for today, it's going to work for the next 3 months, but 6 months down the road, I'm going to be scratching my hand and trying to figure out how this works. No, none of that happens. Those systems work hand in hand. They maintain those integrations. They maintain those integrations with us, and they upgrade as we upgrade on our end. And again, one of the unique thing about NetSuite is all of the 36,000 customers that I mentioned earlier are on the same exact version of NetSuite. There is no two different versions. So you never have to worry about, hey, am I using the latest release or not? So I think that would be my quick introduction for NetSuite for the day here.
Yeah, can
Wonderful.
I just try one quick thing? Because one thing that Assad mentioned was about the ecosystem, and Dave knows this as well. It is very, very rigorous to get into that ecosystem and maintain it every year. And it's done that way so that every partner in there, every integration, every app, whatever it is they're doing is literally best in class. So if you're not a technical person, you might not care about this, but if you are, that's incredibly important because you know that it works. So, and that's a key thing when you're working with this and outside technologies.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Yeah, very robust platform. So Assad, then on to the next. What can NetSuite do better for our merchants and just in general, right, within the ERP kind of space?
Absolutely. And again, this is why those 36,000 companies have chosen us over the course of the last 2.5 decades. Starts with financial management. You're going to get definitely into a lot more details with financial management down the road, but do know that that's our bread and butter. We're at the end of the day an accounting system at the base. When it comes to managing your finances, there is no other solution that's as good as NetSuite. In addition to that, we have the order and the inventory management side of it. That is one of the areas where most businesses tend to struggle on their part. Hey, how do I bring in the order and I make sure that I have the inventory there? Think about it, right? I'm pretty sure everybody that's on the Zoom today has ordered some products from Amazon at some point in time. Not that Amazon uses us, I'm not saying that, but how would you feel that you don't receive your order the next day? You start like, hey, what happened? That's the same thing. We can bring that same level of reliability to your world, to your small enterprise, your medium enterprise, without having to spend the billions of dollars that Amazon has done. Making sure that you have the inventory, you're able to sell it, and you get it delivered the right way to the customer in time. Another area we see quite a bit is reporting. That tends to be an area, I think Ken mentioned this earlier, part of the conversation was on the reporting side of it. This is where businesses tend to struggle. They tend to be very reactive. Reports are late, delayed, sometimes by weeks. this is something where NetSuite can be super helpful around. Workflows is an area where we can really turn and twist this ERP to fit your business exactly. That is something that becomes a big challenge when you start putting in systems together. That's when we basically say it's like, hey, technology is really dictating how you do your business. With NetSuite, that's not the case. You can actually change that around however you want it to be. And we do that quite a bit as well. And the last thing where NetSuite really, really shines is when you're running a business is the transaction reconciliation and the closing processes. Transactions are getting more and more complex. Again, we'll talk about that later today, but this transaction is not just, hey, we sold a product. This is what the cost of product was. This is what my profit margin is, and done. But there's a lot of other things that come into play, taxing and so on and so forth. We'll get more with that. And closing at the end of the day. Every business needs to close. We hear a lot, hey, we're spending a week closing every month. We're spending 10 days closing every month. We have a team of 5, 6, 7 people trying to close the books at the end of the month. Again, with NetSuite, all of that gets sorted out for you.
Excellent. Yeah, which beautiful. So now, I guess let's talk about how, right? And so for the audience, we're effectively going to go through that list we just saw on the previous slide. And Ken, Assad, and Dave are going to provide effectively, I don't want to say strategies because that might be overpromising, but ways to solve for common pain points and problems that we see. Although I will say, just a quick spoiler alert, not to ruin things for everyone, it effectively, all of their responses effectively boil down to 3 things. The first being to audit and streamline your processes, right? Make sure, really get a view of what it is that you're doing and how it's all working for you. And then from there, centralize your data, try and get it all into one place so you have full top level visibility. And finally, automate as much as you can, but I'll let the professionals here talk more about that. So on to the next, financial management. So some common pain points and problems that we see with financial management. Obviously here, manual processes, things being Excel heavy. I mean, let's be real here. We've all had to run a report, had to crunch some numbers in Excel, and unless you're an Excel wizard who really, truly loves to do that. I know some people do, and that's fine. But with it too, especially if you're selling on multiple channels, there's a level of complexity that comes in where the manual, while it's enough to get the job done, it may not be enough to get it done in the time that you need it done to save you the most amount of money. And so with that, I guess, oh yeah, and then the other piece, sorry, the we've always done it this way piece of things, right? It's just because it worked in the past doesn't mean it's the best way for you now. So really trying to remove that type of philosophy from your operations and being more open to, all right, it worked that way, but we can do it better. How can we make it better? So with that, Assad, what are some solutions? How does NetSuite solve for this?
Absolutely, and I'll just mention that one part. Last thing that I mentioned, Anthony, is we've always done it this way. I've been in the industry for about 18 years now. Over the course of the 18 years, I've probably had the opportunity to work with over 2,000 different companies so far. And I would say about 75 to 80% of them have at some point said, well, that's how we have done it so far. Again, that is something that we hear quite a bit. So just wanted to throw a little number out there for us to hang our hat off of for later conversations today. Now, when it comes to financial management, when it comes to NetSuite, one of the things that we mentioned earlier is growth. When you start seeing growth starts with multiple different channels. You're doing online, maybe you go offline, maybe you go through marketplaces, and you name it, right? Again, there's many different things that you're doing. That's when NetSuite really comes and helps you out is managing those separate channels that you have. A lot of those channels may act as the same subsidiary for you. In most cases, businesses will split them up into multiple subsidiaries. Generally speaking, without NetSuite, that's going to be a conversation where you have multiple different systems managing those. Then once those systems manage, you need to pull the data from 5 different areas, 5 different systems, 5 different channels, put it together. Excel comes into the mix for you. And then you have to start manually collating the data that's in there, trying to work the magic, doing a lot of pivot tables and all the other fun stuff that you have to do to get that data right. With NetSuite, all of that goes away. You pull data from all your separate channels into a singular source. You are able to see hierarchy-based data very, very easily on your part. And you can do a lot of automation of the data that's there. When you have to pull in data from your different channels, maybe there's some external channels, maybe external sites. That's when the Jitterbits of the world comes into play. It's like, hey, they could have the connector where we can pull in from a chat from a marketplace. You're seeing a lot of different marketplaces pop up. You're seeing new channels that are popping up. Like the latest one that I've been talking quite a bit about is the TikTok shops for the retail side. So again, how do you get the data from the TikTok shops into NetSuite? Well, that's when the partners, the VFN partners come into play. And at the end of the day, being able to see the right GL impact. So earlier you mentioned that transactions are getting a little bit more complicated, right? Take a standard transaction. There's the cost of sale that's associated with it. Maybe there is shipping that's going to be charged on there. Maybe there's taxing. Taxing can have multiple jurisdictions that come into play. And then there could be other aspects. Maybe there is services that you're providing with that transaction. Maybe there is some digital goods that you're selling with that. So again, you can see how many different ways that the GL needs to get impacted. If you had to do that manually, that is a nightmare to manage on your part. With NetSuite, we can do that very simply, just making sure that the chart of accounts is set up correctly and pulling that data in and impacts that the right way. That's going to help you down the road when we talk about the last thing today is closing your books.
Absolutely. And Ken, Dave, anything to add to that?
Yeah. So, I mean, we lead with this, or at least Assad did, because it's the backbone of what they do. But in reality, cash is the backbone of your business, right? I think Warren Buffett once said, like, the most important resource a business could have is cash. Doesn't matter how good your business model is. You could be in business forever if you have endless supply of money. So you have to be able to manage this system. And one of the things that we see from our merchants all the time is they have a separate financial system, and that's all it does. And that's fine for its purpose. It probably does a good job. The problem with that is you're using a lot of other things, inventory, shipping platforms, all these different systems, and none of them talk, which also means that you're not getting any real-time data of what costs are. Now you have to start doing math, and that's I hate math in general, but let alone just the error of doing it and trying to figure out these pieces. Whereas, shameless plug here that I got to see a couple of weeks ago at Sweet World, was you get to see how this evolves into, I mean, just from an individual letter in seconds to give you forecasting and planning, right? Just based on your financial modeling, like in seconds. Like that's very powerful when you're trying to make decisions, again, in real time.
Absolutely.
And I'll just mention that one thing, if you haven't said this enough, real time is critical. That's what we can deliver, is all of this data in real time for you.
Absolutely. And Dave, any supporting thoughts?
Just real quick, Assad mentioned, multiple channels and maybe different sources and then, spreadsheet gymnastics, Excel gymnastics and all that, right? And I think this is maybe less how to execute, but just something we've seen over the years is, like with Amazon, for example, people trying to get their fees, right? All these fees that happen when you sell something or when you put something in a Amazon warehouse, they have all these fees they need to pay out, right? And they're trying to keep track of all of that. And I've seen people with their spreadsheets trying to break out the different fees so they can capture how much that costs. And that's kind of where we step in and automate some of this stuff so that we can pull that information down and get all these seller fees and just put them into NetSuite, and everybody can sleep at night and let their brain rest, right? As opposed to doing these Excel gymnastics. So that just kind of came to the top of my mind when Assad was mentioning that.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, it sounds like, why there's a tool that can do this really manual kind of process job for you. Why not let it, type thing, right? That's all really great stuff. So I guess on to the next. And Ken, I'd like to pitch these to you. Can you tell us a little bit about, just order, I guess, pain points that people face with regards to order and inventory management?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, here's just kind of a quick list of pain points, right? And these probably aren't uncommon for anyone watching this. You probably have multiple of these. But why is it important to you outside of just the obvious? Because if you're here and you're a ShipStation customer, or you're just an e-commerce seller, regardless of what shipping platform you're using, hopefully you understand how rating systems work, like on Amazon, Shop, all these different marketplaces, eBay, Etsy, it doesn't matter, Home Depot. At the end of the day, whatever your rating is, you're going to appear higher, which means you're going to get more opportunities for sales. So it's not just about pleasing your customers and begging them for reviews and things like that. It's also about getting it there, the correct product on time. You have to have the right tools to be able to do so. I mean, we've seen it. You can go look on reviews, let's just say an order is incorrect or gets delivered incorrectly or how it's late. You're going to get that bad review, not the carrier, not the person in your warehouse, your company, which means it's going to hurt the amount of opportunity you have for sales across these different marketplaces. So you have to have the right tools in place to not only get the product there, but to make sure you have it in stock. Make sure you're preparing. And again, this is where all this data in real time comes in, that if you get a busy week and there's a big rush on some widget you sell, that to order, because you're not going to get it tomorrow, right? It's going to take time and to be able to plan all this stuff. And so it's that aspect of it, of having these in check, are really a key factor of what's going to make you scale as a business. Because if you're not delivering to your end customer, you're dead in the water. So it's my soapbox.
Absolutely. Sweet. Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it makes total sense. So with that, I mean, we have it all listed here, so we don't have to go through and read it. But a thought, how does NetSuite solve for these things?
Well, as they say, we have an app for that. We have a module for that, or multiple modules for that, I should say. So we're starting off with, right, first things first, inventory management. That's a critical piece where NetSuite can come in, really help out with managing your inventory. Once you bring in that inventory, where are you going to place it in your warehouse, multiple warehouses, or maybe through a 3PL? Well, that's where we have a whole WMS solution that comes into play with that. How much am I going to buy? How much do I need? How much should I be buying? How much should I be forecasting for? Again, there is that demand planning and budgeting solutions available for you. And beyond that, if you really want to get into the analysis of it using BI tools and all that, that's when we have the NetSuite Analytics Warehouse available for you. So at the end of the day, are tools available. And again, as we mentioned with NetSuite, it's really a solution for small to large to medium enterprises. You can add these modules as you grow, as you need them. Again, this is something that we see very commonly for our customers, is they'll start with just, hey, we just need inventory management for now. All right, let's just get that done. Let's do the inventory management. So when you buy something, please add it into your warehouse, and then when you sell something, you decrement that. So that's the simplest form of inventory management. Then complexity comes in. Hey, we need to expedite shipping to our customers. We're going to have two warehouses. We're going to have one on the east of the Mississippi, one on the west of the Mississippi. Again, trying to keep it very simple for the day here. That's when you start saying, hey, we really need a WMS solution that can prioritize where the order gets fulfilled from. You can do that manually, and a lot of organizations do that. But that becomes harder, and then your cost of sales goes up. This way, these tools really help you bring that down, the cost of sales, and also bring in efficiencies. And also another thing that happens is eliminates the challenges that come with shipping the wrong product, shipping it from the wrong warehouse, shipping it to the wrong customer. That's where we can really help out with that.
Absolutely. And Ken and Dave, I know, with regards to order management, obviously integration is a key piece of that, right? So Dave, Ken, would be interested to hear your thoughts. Anyone can go first, but yeah, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think, and it was maybe the previous slide, but Ken was mentioning, having it was sort of a customer experience, right? Having a bad customer experience. And if you think about this, right, not taking advantage of these modules. So it sounds like you can sort of bite off as much as you can chew, so to speak, right? But when you have all these disparate systems, we're coming up into a pretty busy time of year, right? For a lot of businesses that are selling online, where we got Black Friday, Cyber Monday, the holidays. You could have the excitement of a really wonderful marketing campaign that you've put together, right? Then if you don't have these things streamlined, you're probably going to move backwards, right? With poor customer experiences, bad reviews online, as opposed to maybe leaping forward and growing, right? So we've found a lot of this stuff is sort of in place at this time of year. People are taking advantage of these types of modules. They have their integrations somewhat set up, or at least the important ones, right? And they're ready to execute, right? And doesn't mean that you can't do last minute things to make sure you're ready, but we've often had we'll get into the new part of the year and people will come to us and say, okay, that was crazy. Let's talk. We have to have this ready for next year, same time, right? And so when Ken brought that up, it just sort of piqued my mind and just the damage you can do to your business if you're not paying attention to this, right? So
Absolutely. And Ken,
Yeah, and just real quick from a ShipStation perspective, the integration is incredibly important, right? And so this is something that, ours is built through the BFM program, the Built for NetSuite program. So again, it's tested, I want to say twice a year, I think, something like that. It's tested a lot, right? They want to make sure everything flows, and we do business with hundreds of NetSuite users. So we got to make sure everything is up to date. But when it comes to integration, it's also just the integrity of it, right? So with ours, within a second, let's just say, or seconds, couple, you're going to import all your orders. So if you're used to already using ShipStation, you go about business as normal, right? It's going to work like any other order source. Like if you were using Shopify or eBay, it works the exact same way, looks exactly the same. And then once you fulfill those orders, it updates instantaneously back to NetSuite. So that information, again, is in real time. So you can see what's going in, you can see what's going out. And that's a problem that we run into when you have these disparate systems that are all connected. You're going to have to, at the end of the day, manually upload it. Well, now you're a day behind, right? If you're trying to demand and forecast, that day is extremely important. If you've ever been in a warehouse, that might be the make or break if you having product in stock. And the other piece of this is if you're trying to do, again, you see all these modules and you have 9 different companies that are doing these, I can promise you it's not free to connect them. And so you're going to be spending a lot of money per each integration. You're also going to have the fun benefit of having just a ton of potential breaking points of where things break down and you're shut down, right? What are you going to do if none of your data is talking, you don't have orders coming in or nothing's going to your financial system? That's a huge roadblock. I mean, that is, again, like Dave mentioned, on Black Friday, you're done. You're going backwards. That's the deal, right? So you want to try to control as much of this process as possible and eliminate any of these potential roadblocks. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, great stuff, guys. And this actually, it transitions perfectly into kind of the next topic, where we're going to be looking at reporting, right? So we talked about all of these orders coming in, speaking to, I think it was Dave's point, after the holidays, after a booming holidays, looking at how everything went, and then tying it to Ken's point, being able to do that in real time whilst the holidays are occurring, huge thing. And so, I mean, we've all done reporting in some capacity, right? I think we're no strangers to the pain points that come with it, but just to kind of lay it out for everybody. One, they take a lot of time to do, and it's not very fun generating reports, right? And in many cases, it does require, especially if you're using like an Excel, a certain level of technical expertise within Excel to pull those really lucrative reports, right? In addition to that, assuming that your data is accurate and valid, and building reports from said accurate, data is also kind of difficult. But really, I think the other piece of it is just the configurability, and I guess, for lack of a better word, customizability of the reports, right? There's limited customization that you can do on a single report without having to generate a separate report. So with that, I know I rambled there on things that we already know, but Assad, tell us how we solve it with NetSuite.
Absolutely. Again, when you talk about reports, right? NetSuite comes with 250 plus reports out of the box. What does that mean is most of your basic reports that you're going to be looking for have already been done for you. Now, you mentioned customizability or the configurability of a report. That is something that is very critical, and that's something that we try to make it as easy as possible. I may look at the same report very differently as you would on your part, right? Again, I may be interested in a different data point. You may be interested in a very different data point. So what NetSuite allows you to do is allows you to pull those reports, make the and customize those reports very simply, and can be done by a business user on that port. So you don't have to worry about start plugging in formulas and such and all the fun stuff that needs to be done with that. If you really want to do that, you can pull those reports out of NetSuite into Excel. Guess what? When you do pull them out into NetSuite, out from NetSuite into Excel, it will pull all of the data, and not only pull all of the data, but it will pull all the formulas and applicable formulas. So you don't have to do reformatting of that report. Generally tends to be the case with many systems that are going to be out there for you. Another thing with that is that all of these reports are going to be in real time. The minute something happens, a minute a sale happens, you'll see that reflected on your sales report. It will also be reflected on your inventory reports. It will also be reflected on the item reports. So again, all of that data will happen in real time. And again, we have these reports that will also impact different dashboards so that the organization, different members are seeing different bits of it right on their dashboards. So if you have, say, again, we talked about Black Friday, or these big events, shopping events that are coming up very soon for us. With having this data available to you in real time from your sales channels, we can impact those dashboards so you can take a look at it, exactly what's going on. If you start seeing something is selling out very quickly, maybe there's a promotion behind it, maybe you want to throttle that promotion at that point. Maybe there is if you see one specific product that's moving very, 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 very quickly, maybe there is some challenge, maybe the pricing is not correct on that. Maybe it's set up, it's discounted too much, or maybe it's discounted way too much. So again, all of those things could happen very, very quickly at that point. And again, at the end of the day, we can analyze multiple different channels. So maybe a product is performing well at one of your marketplaces, but not performing well in your retail stores. Maybe you want to allocate that inventory from that store to the sale to the marketplace. So again, you're able to see those reports and react in real time to that.
Absolutely. And Ken, Dave, anything to add on the reporting piece?
No, I think that was pretty spot on for me.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, for us, we are maybe less about the reporting, right, and more about getting the data into the right spots so that when you are in NetSuite and you're doing your reports, you have all the data you need. So
absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, guys. And so for the audience, you'll have noticed, I think, the previous slides have really kind of focused on the streamlining your processes and kind of centralization of data component of that kind of spoiler alert slide that we had shared earlier, which, if you couldn't tell, is incredibly important. And so I think a key takeaway here is that NetSuite really does allow you to streamline it, and especially when working in conjunction with, third-party apps like a ShipStation or with a iPaaS like Jitterbit. That's really how you get the full bulk of it. But on to the next slide, where I think we're going to really start kind of honing in on the last item of that spoiler alert piece. And so Dave, actually, given the work you all do, I think you are best poised to deliver this. Talk to us about workflows, brother.
Yeah, I think so. What's cool about this is I worked with someone a couple of years ago that described businesses in a really, I found, like, kind of colorful, unique way. And she said, every business is kind of like a snowflake, right? So when you step back and you look at it, they all look the same. But when you get under the microscope and you look at that snowflake, they're all different, right? And she sort of described businesses we deal with they're in a similar fashion, which was, we like to say, okay, well, let's just keep it standard, right? So you have NetSuite and maybe you have Shopify Plus or BigCommerce or something, right? And let's just do standard things between those two endpoints or systems, right? But once you get under the covers, you recognize every single time that each business runs it slightly different. They maybe have some unique fields or some extra detail that they require that's specific only to their business, right? And so you're always going to run into these, like, common problems and pain points with customizations. And what you need to be mindful of when you're selecting your tech stack is that there's flexibility in the software that you're selecting, right? So with NetSuite, and I think Asad will touch on this, you're able to go in and do some custom things, right? Quite a few custom things. Same with Jitterbit and same with ShipStation, right? You're able to have some flexibility so that you as an individual snowflake, as a business, are able to work, the way your business processes are going to work. So I don't know if that sheds any light on it, Anthony, but again, in my experience, that's what we run into 99.9% of the time is, but we do it this way. And we need to be able to say, that's great, and here's how we can help you.
Yeah, we've always done it this way, right?
That's
the
right.
No,
I think
you, yeah, exactly. Our way is different than everyone else's same way.
That's right.
But no, I think you touched on it. It was incredibly helpful, and I think you touched on everything there. I mean, let's be real here, guys. Customizations are inevitable. It's listed here on the deck. Every business is unique. Everyone's going to have their own specific needs. Sure, there's overlap sometimes, but not always. And so in dealing with those kind of differences and trying to really capitalize on them, this is something you're going to face. So Asad, this is where I think you're going to get super, I guess, excited or have some fun here.
Absolutely.
Tell us how we can save people that inevitable piece of it.
No, absolutely. And again, this is, you mentioned a couple of different things, right? So a lot of the companies that we get to work with, hey, we customize the software to do such and such. And when we come in and have the conversation, it's like, well, why don't we do it a little bit differently? But no, that's how we have customized our process. Literally in one encounter, or not, I should say encounter, well, one meetup with a customer, they had a person literally print out the orders and walk it to the other desk. And the other person would manually check that. Again, that system was put in place somewhere in the 80s. So they were very used to printing it out and then walking it over. And they kept asking us, so how do we get that from that desk to that desk? It's like, no, we just assign that person to do that job so they can receive the order directly. I don't have to manually walk this over. And going back to what we were talking about is workflows. With our system in NetSuite, we have this concept of workflows that makes it much easier to make the system flex rather than going in and doing a hard customization around it. Again, it could be a very simple, I'll give you an example, right? So if we're talking a lot about e-commerce orders, we're talking a lot about these Black Fridays and other events that are coming into play very soon for us. It could be like, hey, anytime any customer comes in and places an order that exceeds a certain threshold, I want somebody in my organization to do a check on that order before we ship it out. We see that quite often in e-commerce orders is if it's across the borders type of an order, somebody needs to manually look at that order. So we can assign somebody to do that. That's just a workflow. We don't have to stop the system from doing somebody. It's not going to be like, hey, we have to build out a customization or go through a list of all of the orders that came in today and then go in and look for the 5 big orders that came through or 5 across the borders that came through. This could be just a very simple workflow process. And the key thing with NetSuite workflows is it's like it's really an if then else statement. So if this happens, do this, if not that, right? And again, it is done with no coding. It is geared towards business users doing it. This is something that we actually teach our customers when we are going through the implementation and we have support around it. Is like, we'll show you how to build out the workflow. And then down the road, if you ever get into a challenge with that, there's support to help you with that. Hey, maybe you didn't do this right. Maybe you didn't do that right. This is how we would do it. And there is another area called what we call is our suite answers, where you can actually see how workflows are built out. And there's even videos in there for you to see and follow through with that. So again, at the end of the day, it's a no code or a low code way of doing things. It is geared towards a business user. So you do not need to bring in the whole IT department, have multiple different meetings to say, hey, we want to build out a workflow. Again, it can be done very, very quickly.
Amazing. Yeah. And Ken, I know on the subject of workflows, being that we do integrate with NetSuite, I'm sure you probably have something to add on that topic and just the ease of connecting and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. And so just because a lot of these are pre-built, we've had our integration built with different flows that are, again, probably 95% of our use cases. The one thing I will tell you and Dave knows this because we work with them on a lot of different integrations as well, is, you want to try to stay, again, like Assad mentioned, like a lot of these are pre-built, they're easy to use, they're just kind of a different path of doing it. But again, in the spirit of this, of looking at, what you're currently doing, how to automate this process, you do have to kind of step back and think bigger picture, because if it is the way we've always done it, the question is, does it have to be done that way? If it does, it does. That's a customization. You can't get around it. If it's kind of a nice to have and we like to do this, just remember, and this is not unique to NetSuite or ShipStation, this is universal. The more you customize things that you go crazy with, everything else has to be custom to match it, which means from an integration standpoint, you go from being able to use an out-of-the-box integration that's usually cheaper, easier, and faster, to having a bespoke integration where it's going to be a much longer turn time, much larger cost, all that good stuff. And then you're going to have to replicate that over how many systems. So you want to try to keep everything in your flow as standard as possible, but there's always going to be certain things that, hey, our business needs it. We got to do this. And that's taken into consideration with a lot of these systems, but just keep that in mind when it comes to trying to do custom flows.
Absolutely. That's a really good call out. Dave, anything to add to those points?
No, I know we're a little tight on time, so I think both Ken and Assad nailed it there.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you being mindful of that. So yeah, and with that, we do have a couple more slides to go. Just to make sure we have some time for Q&As. We may not. In the event that we run out of time, please feel free. There's a contact slide at the end. You can send your questions to any of the contacts there, and we'll be sure to respond to them after this. Additionally, we will be sending out and sharing a recording of the webinar once it's over. So on to the next. And Assad, really, I think, with regards to transaction reconciliation and closing, I know in our previous things, we kind of discussed this a bit more. So please tell our users a little bit more about the common problems that people face. I can't imagine it's too different from financial management, but I'll leave it to you.
Now, absolutely. And I'll keep it quick on this one as well. We mentioned this earlier. Transactions get complex as time progresses, multiple different components. With a lot of what customers or people are trying to do at the end of the day is they have to reconcile. How much money did we make? How many transactions did we have? How do those transactions relate to sales orders? A lot of that tends to be done manually. You're doing one-on-one matching in cases when you start thinking about marketplaces, external channels that your orders are coming in from. That gets harder and harder for you to do that. That becomes Excel heavy. So all of a sudden you're pulling all of that data into Excel, and then you're collating the data. Is like, does this match? Does that match? Does that match or not? So you're doing literally sales order transactions, matching sales orders to a credit card transactions, and sometimes things can be off by pennies, and then you get errors. So it makes your life much harder with that. With NetSuite, if you were to move on to our next slide, we have this whole process of the NetSuite reconciliation tool, or NSAR, that's available for you. We're able to pull data from multiple different sources and even external sources if we need to. We're then able to match the transactions for you. And then there is a whole automation of the reconciliation process that happens with that. You can also plug in checklists if you need to do that. There are some exception rules that you can build into it as well if you need to. So again, that could be done very simply there. Data comes into NetSuite, gets matched, and then you're able to reconcile very quickly. Once the reconciliation happens, then you could get into the closing checklist from there. Closing checklists can be anything that you want it to be. It's usually a 4 or 5 step process. Close the transactions, close the sales orders, pay the vendors, and then you go into the next level with that.
Excellent. Yeah. And then Ken, Dave, anything to add on that process there?
So it looks like there's a question. I don't know if you guys seen it as well from Max. I think it's in line with maybe what we're talking about here. And I don't know the answer, but the question.
I do.
Oh, do you? Okay. So the question for the audience is, how do you determine when an order from NetSuite would be ready to send to ShipStation? So Max, thanks for that question.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of does fit. So we look for 3 different things depending on what flow you're using. So if you're using sales orders, we're going to look for orders that are in the pending fulfillment status. And then so we'll obviously write back to the IFR the item fulfillment record after it's done in ShipStation. If you're already using the item fulfillment record, then we'll either look for it in the picked or packed stage, and that's going to depending on what you're wanting station to do, right? Is it already picked, or are you going to pack it in there? But the process really is very similar. It's more of just pointing us to what you want us to pull in at what point in time in your order process.
Awesome stuff. All right, sweet. So with that, guys, thank you so much. We are at the end of our presentation. Big thank you to, I guess, our first and foremost, our speakers and panelists here. Thank you guys for hopping on. A second big thank you, honestly, this should probably be the first, to our viewers and the people who signed up to join in. We appreciate you all spending this last hour with us. Couple of things for you all, some call to actions here. Feel free to download the ebook at the link here. It's really a great read. We tried our best to, demystify ERPs, right? Take all of the kind of crazy, God, I'm rambling. Anyway, download the ebook. We also have a ShipStation for NetSuite guide, right? The question about how ShipStation and how orders get pulled into ShipStation and all that, it's likely covered in that guide a little bit, or at least there's some information there. And lastly, if you want to reach out to any of us, the emails are listed here. I know, Dave, you had requested here. For those interested in contacting Dave, you can reach out to him at Dave, D-A-V-E, .malda, M-A-L-D-A, at jitterbit.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony.
And then, yeah, of course, brother, no problem. And then lastly, feel free to connect with our awesome speakers on LinkedIn. Links are all here. So with that, thank you all. We appreciate you joining us, and have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.